Hello everyone and welcome to a wonderful game from round 5 of this year's US Chess Championship. It is Christopher Yu versus last year's winner Fabiano Caruana, who seems to be unstoppable this year as well. But yeah, every game is a story for itself, so let's see what happened in this one. Christopher has the white pieces and he starts off with a Reti opening. Knight f3 and Fabi strikes with pawn to c5, inviting pawn to e4 to transpose into the Sicilian, but pawn to c4. We transpose into the English now, pawn to b6 and knight to c3. Bishop to b7, we have e4 and pawn to e6, the so-called Kramnik variation of the Sicilian. Yes, we have transposed into the Sicilian now. Pawn to d4, c captures, knight captures, and knight to f6. d6 is a bit more common perhaps, but here we have knight to f6, bishop to d3, and now there is a game where pawn to d6 was played, but here we have knight to c6, and it is now as of move 7 already that we have a completely new game, which for a Sicilian defense in classical chess is pretty spectacular. Okay, knight captures on c6, we have d captures and pawn to e5, grabbing more space, freeing up the light square bishop, of course makes sense. Knight to d7, also knight to g4 is a very interesting idea, but Fabi has something else in mind. Knight to d7, bishop to f4, and now queen to c7, putting pressure on e5, but well, there aren't that many lines where you're willing to capture on e5 and allow this bishop to remain on this pin. So queen e2, defending on e5, and castles queenside by Fabi. Very, very interesting decision. And okay, you could perhaps castle kingside, but that would not be the best idea. Here we have castles queenside, but not right away. After queen to e2, first castles queenside, and now bishop to g3. Waiting with castles, and this gives Fabi an interesting idea. He plays pawn to h5, bishop to h4, attacking the rook, and here comes Fabi's idea. Knight captures on e5. He says, all right, since you waited so long for castling, I'm going to sacrifice the exchange now. And you could also play queen captures on e5. Even this is possible, like bishop captures, king captures, and now whether white would trade queens or not, that is to be seen. But Fabi's idea was, okay, I will have the bishop pair, I'll be up a pawn, and if my bishops can occupy some very strong diagonals, I should have, well, sufficient compensation, and I will have an interesting game. So bishop to h4, knight captures on e5 instead. All right, Christopher captures the rook, bishop captures, but now a nice Zwischenzug, knight captures on d3 check. Queen captures and queen captures on d8. Fabi again offers a queen trade, says, let's play this endgame, and Christopher says, okay, all right, let's play it, but I want you to capture on d3 so I can already have my rook on d3 and then just double up on the d file. Fabi says, nope, queen to c7. Now, interestingly, the engine says queen captures on d3, by far the best move. Fabi's queen to c7, close second. But again, you have the bishop pair. It's very inhuman to trade the queens off. I mean, keeping the queens on the board when you're human just makes so much more sense. You're imagining your bishop pair to assume this these two diagonals, and I mean, you're just going to have a wonderful time, if that is possible. So, okay, king to b1 and bishop to e7. Okay, nicely continuing development. The bishop might come to f6. We have rook h to e1 and pawn to g6. We have pawn to g3 and king to b8. And now queen to e3. Now, the question is how to continue this game for Fabi, as it's not as if he's the one pushing for anything here. The move you really want to play is c5, but you can never play it. If you play c5, then you can resign. Once you allow the knight to b5, the game is over. Like queen c5, you're going to give a nice check here after king a8, knight c7 check, you're going to, go for some windmill action. Let's say king goes here, knight to c8 check, and now knight e8 check, and you will pick up the free rook on h8 as you've disconnected the queen's defense of the rook. So that is, well, only one reason why you can never play it. Plus, it's really useful, shouldering off the knight from advancing. So here, pawn to b3. Interestingly, you could also go for something like knight to e4. But we're gonna get to that. First, bishop to e6 was played, going after the c4 pawn, and now we have pawn to b3. Knight to e4 after bishop to e6 is what should be played, because bishop captures on c4 is never really a threat. If you capture it, bishop to c3, and Fabi can resign. But I think this is well, bishop to a6 is playing on reputation alone. Pawn to b3, Christopher defends the c4 pawn, and now Fabi goes back. Bishop to c8, we have pawn to f4, and now pawn to h4. We have queen to e5, offering a queen trade, and Fabi invites it, pawn to f6. Okay, queen back to e3. Again, if you capture your position is perfectly fine, you can definitely play it. But he decides to keep the queens on the board, and now Fabi plays h captures, and pawn to e5. Strikes in the center, and we know that, well, rooks love open files, but bishops love open diagonals, so it's gonna be pretty crazy here. F captures, and now rook to h1, offering a rook trade, and Fabi goes bishop to c5. This is how he activates the bishop pair, and the f5 square is defended, so bishop f5 is probably coming next. And here you should play queen to e2, but in the game queen to g5 was played, and now it's much better for Fabi. He plays rook captures on h1, and now rook captures on h1. And the question is, what do you play here? It's not some sort of a crazy maneuver, but there is a move that drastically improves your position, and you have to, you know, be a very, very strong player to see it. What would you play here in Fabi's position? The move is queen to d6, and this is the move you should always be looking for. If you have a queen, the queen is your most powerful piece, but only if it's covering a lot of squares on the board. And queen to d6 is a beautiful centralizing move that comes not only, well, as an improvement to your overall situation, but it defends the g6 pawn, and also it counters rook to d1. If rook to d1 can be played here, then it's great, but rook to d1 falls miserably to bishop f5 check, and after king to a1, look at this, bishop to b4, a beautiful queen sacrifice to deliver a double bishop checkmate. Absolutely spectacular. So after bishop to b4, you can't really capture the queen. You're going to have to move the rook to defend the knight, and now the queen just piles up. Okay, the king defends, but white has no moves here. There is literally no useful move you can make here, and if the queen ever leaves the control over the d2 square, then just queen d2 check, and it's game over, with the bishop covering the light squares and the queen capturing the rook. That's game. So yeah, rook to d1, not possible. Queen captures, no longer a move. What is there for young Christopher to do? Well, he plays pawn to g4, which definitely makes sense. You have to keep an eye on that f5 square. Queen to d3 check, made possible by queen d6, king to b2, and now bishop to d4, threatening captures and just game over. Rook to c1, and now pawn to a5. Fabi not only advances a pawn in front of his opponent's king, but also creates some breathing room for his king if that white queen starts annoying him. We have pawn to a4, and now queen to e4. King to c7 with bishop to d7 is a nice a prophylactic idea, but he goes queen to e4 first. Of course, the knight is pinned, so we're not going to discuss that. Queen to f6. The reason why queen to e4 is not the most precise idea is actually pawn to c5. That's the annoying part. And now if you play bishop captures on c5, the knight is no longer pinned. You're just going to lose the queen. And if you play b captures on c5, then queen to d8, and now you have the b6 and a5 squares to harass the black king. So probably black can still push for the win, but it's not going to be easy. That's why queen to e4 is not the most precise idea. But even though Christopher has a lot of time on the clock, he doesn't find it. He plays queen to f6, and now Fabi plays king to c7. We have pawn to g5. Here, it's again a very, very difficult position. Christopher has to play pawn to b4, as one often does in difficult positions. Point being that after, let's say, queen captures on g4 and b captures on a5, b captures, there's king b3. You just unpin, and now after something like queen g3, putting pressure on the knight, there's queen e7 check, and now after bishop to d7, there's pawn to c5, and this will be enough to grab a draw. It's very difficult to see all this, but that was the only way for Christopher to continue. He played pawn to g5, and that simply will not do. That pawn had a very important role on g4, and that was to prevent bishop to f5. Fabi goes queen to d3. We have queen to e7 check, king to b8, and now queen to d6 check, hoping for some perpetual action here. King to b7, queen to e7 check, and king to a6, and now pawn to b4. If you allow pawn to b5, it's going to be game over, so Fabi has to capture capture. He plays queen captures on c4, and now queen to e8, going after the bishop. Queen captures on b4 check, king to a2, and now queen to c4 with check. King b2 and king to b7 defending the bishop, but now queen to e7 check. So is it possible that Christopher figured out a way on how to harass the black king indefinitely? Not really. King to b8, queen to d6 check, king to a8, and now he goes for queen captures on g6. But just in case you're wondering what happens if you just continue harassing the bishop, well, then you give a check, and after the king moves, now you just play king to b7, and now you don't have the e7 square to continue checking the black king, and also d square is covered by the bishop. So that's why queen captures on g6. Bishop to e6, now going after some very nasty ideas like queen to a2 checkmate as the bishop is pinned. So rook to c2, freeing up the back rank for the white king, but it doesn't matter. It's actually a forced mate in 6 here, and Fabi finds it. Queen to a2 with check. We have king to c1, bishop to e3 check, king to d1, and bishop to g4 with check. And it was in this position on move 48 that Christopher Yu resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. So beautiful, beautiful game by Fabi, beautiful exchange, sacrifice, and the bishop pair gets the job done. And if you continue, it's a very quick checkmate. There are no squares. All of the squares in front of the white king are covered, and you have to start giving up material, and the black queen will just gobble everything up and deliver checkmate to the white king. So yeah, very nicely done by Fabi. And the other game that I really wanted to show you, and also yeah, Fabi is now again over 2,800 on the live ratings. So it's now again Magnus, Fabi, and Hikaru Nakamura, and he even overtook Hikaru with his brilliant play in the US Chess Championship now on the live ratings. And I just wanted to show you this game. This is Levon versus Shankland. We're not gonna analyze it too much. I'm just gonna quickly show you the opening. So it was a nice Sicilian standard opening, some sort of a dragon setup. H3. Okay, this is all very standard. I just want to get to the position where fun stuff happens. Queen c7, b5. Okay, closing the position. Bishop g5, rook e8, queen e3. Bishop h6, standard dragon stuff. Levon offers a trade of dark square bishops. Bishop to h8, and now rook to d3. Queen to b4, preparing rook to c4, which could be very, very interesting, as there is quite a lot of pressure on that d4 square, but it's not the best. Bishop g5, we have rook to c4, and now Levon starts sacrificing. Knight to f5, which is a brilliant move if you capture the knight, but if you don't capture the knight, it's just gonna remain there, or it will have to move. The problem is it's very hard to figure out how to play this. If you just wait, then probably something like bishop h6 check, king g7, and the knight will go back and repeat delivering checks. Other moves like queen captures on b2 maybe can be played, but then rook to b1, queen captures on c2, and you will well, just continue harassing that black queen, and you will have to repeat. So there's that. So I mean, you should play something like that. Just play a nice slow move that don't give your opponent anything, or queen to c5, just offer a queen trade and trade queens. But Shankland captured the knight, and now his position is just dead lost already on move 22. Levon played bishop to h6, and he asked, all right, how do you stop queen g5 check? I mean, you're getting checkmated here. And okay, Sam said, no, I'm not. I'm gonna play knight captures on e4 and prevent queen to g5. But okay, Levon says, I'm going to capture your knight and still play queen to g5 check. And Sam says, no, you're not. Bishop to e5. And now this covers queen to g3. And also if queen to g5, he freed up the h8 square for his king. But now Levon plays a beautiful, beautiful move, and that is knight captures on d4. He is adamant about sacrificing this knight. The problem is Sam can never capture it. And I mean, look at this. If you capture with the bishop, then you're no longer controlling this diagonal. It's a matter of a simple queen g5 check, and you're getting checkmated. But other ideas aren't that much better. If you play e captures on d6, that means that the rook on e8 is now undefended, which means you really can't move this bishop. So queen g5 check, and now you're getting checkmated. If you go bishop to g7, then just rook captures on e8 checkmate. But the fun stuff happens if you play king to h8. Now look at this. Queen to g7 check. Beautiful queen sacrifice, bishop captures, rook captures on e8, only move bishop f8, and rook captures on f8 will be checkmate. So you cannot capture it, or you could play queen captures on d6 and just part with your queen, but that's also the same as resigning. So pawn to f6, Sam finds a way on how to continue fighting, but now Levon just says, all right, thank you for the free material, queen captures, and pawn to f4. Yes, queen g3 is impossible because the bishop defends it. Sorry about the weird arrow, but pawn to f4 makes it all possible. King to h8, you cannot allow check and check. So f captures on e5, grabbing more material, rook to g8, and now rook to d2, defending against rook captures on g2. And it was in this position on move 29 that Sam Shankland resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. He captures on f6 is coming. If he captures, then queen captures. This is covered. There are no ways to make more threats. And bottom line, you're down a full rook, so it would be pointless to continue playing this. So yeah. Sam really shouldn't have accepted that knight to f5 move. I mean, Levon plays it. Sam probably he didn't want it to seem like he wasn't prepared for it, so he captured it, and he even spent some 8 minutes on deciding whether to capture or not. But yeah, it was too deadly. So yeah, beautiful game by Levon, and also here are the standings after 5 rounds have been played. There you have it, Fabiano Caruana leading with a full point margin, 4 points. Hans Niemann, Sam Sevian, and Wander Liang, and Wesley So on 3 points. 2.5 points for Levon Aronian, Ray Robson, and Grigori Oparin. 2 points for Sam Shankland, and on 1.5 points, Lenier Dominguez Perez, Christopher Yu, and Abhimanyu Mishra. So yeah, there we have it. Very interesting stuff, but it seems that we are heading for a repetition of last year. Fabi taking the lead and just obliterating everyone, or will someone else have to say something about that? If you guys are interested, I could check who is Fabi's next opponent. Fabi's next opponent is Grigori Oparin, who is doing very well in the tournament, so should be an interesting matchup. So yeah, hope you enjoyed it. Very nicely done by Fabi. As usual, he truly is a sensational player. I would like to wish a very happy birthday to Danush, and I would like to thank Ivan Sterling, Just van Weert, Jean-Paulo Londono, and BulletChessThriller.com for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check upon your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all, I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.